Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone, wherever you may be in the world. Lessons learned from the PMP exam 2021 is our topic today. In fact, it's a repeat. It's part 2. We did this last week already, and today we are continuing to talk about lessons learned from the exam. So our learning goal here, our learning objective hasn't changed. At the end of today's live stream, you will be able to describe what to expect on the 2021 PMP exam based on lessons learned that we have gathered from folks around the internet. Hello, everybody. My name is Cornelius Fichtner. I have been a PMP trainer for about 12 years now, and my claim to fame is the PM Exam Simulator. You see the logo there on the left-hand side. I developed a few other products, the PM Formulas, the PDU podcast, the PM podcast, and also the PM Prepcast. That's where you may know me from. All right, what is the agenda today? Here we go. So at first, I want to talk to you about the upcoming PMP exam prep courses that we have ready to go for you. And then I have gathered a ton of lessons learned from people who have taken the 2021 PMP exam. And you'll notice there that at the bottom it says lessons learned number question mark. Last week in part 1, I said I have 33. I have added about a dozen and I've removed a few. So I have no idea how many lessons learned I actually have for you today. And what I do have, though, is at the end, I want to give you a take action to pass your PMP exam. But here is the big one. I'm not really sure if I can get through all the lessons learned here today. There are so many that I have. Last week, we were scheduled to go for about 45 minutes. It ended up being an hour and 15 minutes. Today might just turn out to be exactly the same. So let us not delay. Let's get started with the first lessons learned for you. And this is exactly the same lessons learned that I started with last week. And by the way, the first 5 to 7 minutes of this today's live stream, probably very similar to what you have seen last week. So please don't despair if the next few minutes are roughly the same. There's going to be a big change in the Agile section with additional lessons learned that you have not yet seen coming and other new sections that I've actually added. Okay. All right. So lessons learned 2021, it's all situational questions. That is good because this means that PMI has not substantially changed the PMP exam. Okay. In about 2016, 2017, that's when PMI began to change the exam from knowledge-based questions over to situational questions. And that change is continuing. And as you will see, it's continuing in a different direction as well. That's where the new lessons learned come in. So knowing that it's all situational questions is good because that means that when you go into the exam simulator of your choice, then you can know that if this simulator is asking you knowledge-based questions, you have the wrong simulator. You need questions that are situational in order to prepare for the exam. All right, with this general lessons learned out of the way, let me put in a quick plug here for our upcoming PMI PMP courses. So these 3 courses that you see here, the 2-week after work course, the 5-week Saturdays course, and the 1-week PMP Power Prep course that we have in March, these courses are the official PMI PMP Prep course. So if you are looking to take a course to prepare you for the PMP exam, this is the official course developed by PMI and taught by our experienced instructors. If that interests you, then please do take a look at pm-prepcast.com/PMP, where you will find the March courses. I'll bring this URL up later again so that you can see it later again. Okay, and now let's get started with the first section of our lessons learned. We'll start with the question types, because in 2020, there was only one question type on the exam, a question, 4 answers, that's it. But now they have 5 question types. This lessons learned here, this person had 4 question types. He said matching was by far the easiest of all the types. Selecting multiple answers was kind of tricky, but not very difficult. Also, there were questions where you had to click on a chart. So you can see out of this that there are multiple types of questions already. So instead of having just one answer to choose, you have to choose 2 answers. So a question, 7 answer options, and then it says select 2 out of these 7. And you have to select 7. Okay, and matching, where you have drag and drop, and point and click, where you have to click into a chart and say, this is in the chart area where the answer can be found. Okay, next one, next lessons learned. In terms of the new format of questions, I got matching and multiple response. I'd say about 20 questions overall were like that. For fill-in-the-blank questions, you have to type the letter A, B, C, and D in the answers instead of selecting it. So another question type is this, what PMI calls the limited fill-in-the-blank. Limited. Okay, so you know the old question style, right? You have a question, you have 1, 2, 3, 4 answers underneath it, and you point to the B and you click B, that's what I want. Okay. Now with this limited fill in the blank, PMI gives you a space, single space, and you have to type B on your keyboard, B. Okay. Why PMI has chosen to add that type of question, we don't know. I can't see the point of those. What's the difference between clicking B, radio button, next, or typing B, letter B, next? I don't see a major difference there in terms of what it does for the exam. Okay, so maybe PMI will let us know at some point why they have done these question types. Okay, next, there were several drag and drop questions. Oh yeah, the drag and drop questions. So the matching questions. Now imagine they give you 4 items like do, check, act, plan. Right, that's in the wrong order. Now put them in the wrong order, in the right order. So I have to plan, step 1, do, step 2, check, step 3, act, step 4. Right, so that's the kind of question that you can expect on the exam as well nowadays. 1 click on the diagram question, so point and click kind of questions. Many choose 3, choose 2. These can't be skipped, incomplete, so flag them and go back. So if you are not 100% sure about whether or not a question is when you have to choose 2, you cannot just say, oh, I'll just choose 1 and then move on. No, you can't. You have to choose 2 before you move on. Okay. And there are 1 or 2 fill-in-the-blank questions, which was just type A, B, C, or D. Rajesh asks, are these videos available for replay? Where can we find part 1 of the videos? It is on Facebook and on YouTube available. And I'm pretty sure that my colleague Shannon, who works with us in the background, is monitoring this. And she's nodding. I can see her nodding. She's going to post the link in just a moment so that you can see part 1 there, Rajesh. Okay, moving on. 1 more of these question types. I only had 1 question where I had to enter A, B, C, D based on the diagram shown. No question where I had to click on the hotspots. So don't expect that you will find all questions on your exam. Maybe you have a hotspot. Maybe you have a type in A, B, C, or D. Maybe you won't. It all depends on your individual exam. In the online exam, Vanessa asks, can you mark questions as incomplete and go back to them? Vanessa, my understanding is, wait, let me go back. Where is it? No, I can't find it just now. So the idea is this. If you have a multiple correct answer, say, 1 question, 7 answers, select 2. Okay, you cannot just select 1 and move on. But what you can do is you can mark that question not selecting anything, mark that question, and then later on you can come back to that question and answer it completely. Okay, but you cannot just select one out of the two and move on. That is not possible. Okay, moving back on here. All right, so that was the question types. Now, about the question style. And this is now where it starts to become interesting. So the slides that you've just seen, they were pretty much the same as last week in part one, but now we're really getting into the new stuff that we have learned. And you are absolutely welcome, Vanessa. Happy to help out here. Okay. So PMI is really trying to measure how much you are able to apply the knowledge you know in real life scenarios. This has often been a critique of the PMP exam. This is not real life. This is just PMI methodology that you're testing, nothing real life. More and more people are coming back to us with exactly that type of feedback. Okay, look at the next one here. Another factor helped me is real live experience in managing projects and people. Although we need to wear the PMI hat, but I found that this is not very different. That hat is not very different from what the project managers needs to do in managing real live projects. So 2 people giving us the feedback saying, okay, yeah, this is an exam, but your real live experience really applies, and what you see on the exam is not so different what's being done on real projects out there in the world, at least from these 2 folks right here. Okay. One question, how many questions from the Agile framework? 50, we'll get to that in a little bit, 50%. Can I answer both and mark to revisit, change later? Yeah, of course you can, Jamie, yes. So if you have multiple choice, select 2, you can click, and still say, I want to mark this and come back again later. That's not a problem. What do we have here? Padmini, giving my exam this Sunday. I've done 1 full exam of prep course and scored 71. Plan to doing this 2 to 4 full exams. Am I ready? Padmini, 75% is generally what we tell people. So if you are using my simulator and you are between 70 and 80% correct, which you are in 1 full exam, then you are at about an 88% chance of passing your exam. That's just high-level overall statistics from all our students, okay? Everybody is different, so I cannot guarantee that your percentage is also at 88%, but statistically speaking, it is 88%. Thank you, Paul. Your exam simulator is excellent and highly recommended. Appreciate it. Okay. Let's go back to the question style. Okay, so now we've learned the questions are very much based in real life scenarios. Your experience matters, all of that. But, you know, unfortunately, never at any time did I feel like, oh yeah, no brainer. I know this question. So these questions are hard. The PMP exam is not an easy exam. All right, just be aware of that you will be taking the PMP exam and you won't just find, oh yeah, that's easy. I've passed it. No issues whatsoever. The good news is that most of the time you can easily eliminate 1 to 2 answers right off the bat. But then, like in real life, again, somebody who says like in real life, you will have to choose between a good answer and the best answer. Okay. So this is also important to know that, you know, it is a multiple choice test. And so multiple choice test strategies still apply, right? You can often eliminate 1 or 2 answers, but then answers 3 and 4 might be C or D, right? And that's when you have to let your gut speak, your intuition speak, where your experience comes in, and where, you know, you've answered hundreds of questions previously, where that comes in as well. Okay. One more. The actual exam questions were a bit shorter than the ones on the practice tests, but in a way, practicing longer tests will make you familiar, make you feel exam bit easy. Okay. I'm sorry. This shows you that I'm really taking these and I'm copy pasting these lessons learned verbatim onto my slides here, right? So, but you get the general idea. The questions on the exam are shorter. And this, frankly, is also where in the exam simulator, we have doing a balancing act, not just us, everybody. I mean, Dan Ryan has a simulator, PM Training, Rita Mulcahy, Andy Crow has a simulator. There's one more that I've forgotten. I don't know. So all of us who are doing simulators, we have a balancing act, right? The PMP exam is extremely vague in some questions. And some people are saying, you know, I read the question, I read the answers, and I'm like, this doesn't even match. These answers do not respond to the question, right? So vague. If we did this in our exam simulator, you would send us an email after email after email complaining that our simulator is way too vague. Then you go take the PMP exam, and you're going to come back to us and you're going to say, I'm sorry, you were right. The PMP exam is this vague, right? So we are doing a bit of a balancing act, which means our questions are a bit longer so that we can get rid of some of the vagueness, but we have to leave it a little bit vague still, right? So that's the big balancing act that we have to be working on. All right, what we got here? Shubhajit asks, in addition to Rita Mulcahy's 10th edition, do we need to refer to the PMBOK 6th edition book as well? I would say so, yes. That is always a good idea to review the PMBOK guide, in particular the Agile sections. So if you don't do anything else, read the opening section in each of the main chapters. So for example, let's look at 5 scope, right? 5 scope. Scope has 6 processes, right? And an opening section as well. So what you definitely want to do is, if you find the PMBOK guide to be really boring, right? Most people do, then read at least the introduction to scope. Read the introduction to schedule, read the introduction to all the 10 knowledge areas. It's 13 chapters, 10 knowledge areas. Thierry says, I have been tutoring people from the last 3 years. It is my sense that the updates to PM Prep Pass gives you the best chance to pass. Thank you, Terry. That's very kind of you to say. Joel says, I took my exam last December and the results are not satisfactory. I'm planning to take it again in April. Should I focus on PMBOK 6th edition, newer version coming soon? Okay, let me just clearly state this. Do not worry about the PMBOK Guide 7th edition. It is not coming out soon. And PMI has clearly stated the PMBOK Guide 7th edition will not change the PMP exam. PMBOK Guide 6th edition is what you look at right now. Joel, at the end, I have a recommended approach for people like you who started in 2020 and now have to take the 2021 exam. Okay, so that will be coming. Okay. Sarah Threy asks, any recommendations on choosing a simulator? Well, I may be biased, but this is the one that I would recommend. Obviously, I recommend my own, right? PMExamSimulator.com. That's the exam simulator that I would recommend. Okay. Where does the introduction end? Nicole, I'm not quite sure I understand what you mean where does the introduction end? If you may, maybe you want to clarify that a little bit. Okay. Sharon, I noticed that the booster cover, the 3 chapters, and they're agile. Should we focus on the chapters that booster cover? So in the booster course, that's our course to help people from 2020 over to 2021. We have a number of recommendations. I'm not 100% sure that I do understand exactly what you mean. What we did in the booster courses, we realized many people focused on the process in 2020. They left sort of the people sections aside. They left the business environment sections aside. So in the booster course, we're telling you, shift your focus onto the people, shift your focus onto the business environment, because you probably know much of what we have, what you should know of the process area in the PMBOK guide. All right, let us move on here. Got one more here. Question style. It wasn't a walk in the park. Daunting questions, also very similar to Prepcast. Sometimes with tweaks, and sometimes they felt too easy to questions. Can't be that easy. And let me paraphrase. When I took my exam of the PMP exam, there was a question on my exam that said, A equals 1, how much is A? A equals 1, how much is A? I'm paraphrasing, obviously. I'm still thinking of that question today. Did I misunderstand it? Did I misread it? What on earth am I not seeing here? Okay. And obviously, A is 1 because it said so in the question. A is 1. But I'm still wondering, it can't be that easy, can it? Right? And obviously, this person here had exactly the same thing to say. All right. And then many people actually, they use our exam simulator and they say, you know, a lot of good about it. And this person here says 51% of my exam in both exams. He took both the ACP exam and the PMP exam. That's why he or she says both exams. Are there any ITTO questions on the 2021 exam? Vanessa, we'll get to that in a bit. Spoiler alert, very few. Okay, moving on. Next, exam content outline. Now, this is a brand new section here that we have for you in comparison to last week, because I found this here. There was a question that referenced personality indicators. Personality indicators. I never saw anything about this tool in any of my studying. Okay, so if you don't know what a personality indicator is, Myers-Briggs, DISC, those type of things where your personality is analyzed and then they tell you that you're a green beret with a tendency to be purple or something along those lines, okay? And what I recommend is the following, okay? This person had no idea that a personality indicator could be on the PMP exam, but PMI clearly stated that personality indicators could be on the exam, okay? Let me say this. In task 14 of the exam content outline, PMI writes the following. Wait, let me read this to you here. There we go. Promote team performance through the application of emotional intelligence. Assess behavior through the use of personality indicators, and analyze personality indicators and adjust to the emotional needs of key project stakeholders. So in the exam content outline, that's where PMI defines what's going to be on the exam. The term personality indicator is there, okay? If that's not in your training, then your training has a problem, quite clearly, okay? It does not match what PMI says is on the exam, okay? Now, how do you do this? What do you do about this, right? How do you make sure that you know everything that you need to know for the exam? Well, my tip, print the exam content outline, okay? Here is just a screenshot from the current exam content outline from PMI, okay? Print it out, then take a green highlighter, a yellow highlighter, and a red highlighter. You know where I'm going with this, right? Go top down through all the domains, all the tasks, all the enablers that are in the exam content outline and highlight in green everything that you say, yes, I know this. This was part of my training. I think I understand this. I don't have to go deeper into this. Yellow, where you'd go, well, might have heard about it, not quite sure. And red, what on earth is this? I have never even heard about this. Okay, this here is just an example of what it will look like at the end, right? Now you have an exam content outline that matches your knowledge, matches your training, and you can now look at this and go, oh, I have to learn about this red stuff. I have to review the yellow things, right? And if you do that, you will not be surprised on the PMP exam if they start talking to you about personality indicators, because you'll have seen, oh, personality indicators, red, and then you'll read up on them, and now you know what a personality indicator is and how it applies to the PMP exam. Okay, let's see if I have any more questions here. You mentioned to read at least the introduction of each chapter. How far into the chapter does the introduction end? Oh, that, Nicole. It's usually 2 to 3 pages. Okay, so 5.1 is 5.0, for example, is the introduction, and 5.1 in the PMBOK guide will be the first chapter, the first process. So read the introduction until you hit the first process. That's usually it. Okay. Sarat says, I have read Retail Case 9th edition, but they unveiled the 10th edition in 21. Is it required to go through before taking the exam? Sarat, again, if you go now through the exam content outline, just like you see here on the screen, and you do use the green, yellow, and red, you will know whether you understand everything that you need to understand, okay? Whether it's part of the book. Okay, Anthony, 67, 75, 70, 75 in the 4-test prepcast simulator. Am I ready to take the PMI test? Anthony, statistically speaking, yes. Right, so purely statistically speaking, you are on the right track. I cannot guarantee that you pass your exam, but with those numbers, you are in good company, and statistically speaking, you have about an 88% chance of passing your PMP exam with these numbers. And my lawyer asks me to say, your mileage may vary, right? Because these are hundreds of people who have wrote it back, and it's just a statistical question there. Ernie asks, yes, about the PMBOK Guide 7th edition. Yes, I've already covered that. Forget the PMBOK Guide 7th edition. Do not worry about it. Use the 6th edition. And let me repeat that. Use the 6th edition. Do not worry about the PMBOK Guide 7th edition. Okay? It doesn't matter where it comes out. It is unimportant for the current PMP exam. Moving on. Agile. That's a big topic because Agile dominates lessons learned. If you read lessons learned on the internet today, it's about Agile, Agile, Agile. Okay? And here's the first one. Read the Agile part of the PMBOK and the tailoring and hybrid projects. Okay, so remember, I just explained to you that you should, in the PMBOK guide, read the introduction. Okay, in the introduction, there is always one segment that talks about, I'll get to it eventually, one moment. Here we go. Trends and emerging practices in project quality management. Then there is tailoring considerations and considerations for agile and adaptive environments. Okay, that's in the PMBOK guide in every single introduction to the individual knowledge areas. Okay, if you read the introduction, you will understand what PMI wants you to know in regards to agile and tailoring of that particular knowledge area. Moving on. Just make sure how to move in Agile. Change requests, difficult people, conflicts, motivation, lack of team skill sets, few budget questions, but not too serious. Understand product performance and what to do about it when it sucks. Okay, the last bit there has to do with formulas. We'll get to the formulas in more detail. But the core of this tells you must know Agile, right? And this is why in my later recommendations, I will also tell you to read the Agile Practice Guide, the Agile Manifesto, and the Scrum Guide. We'll get to that, okay? Can we expect a question from each enabler in the real PMP exam? No, Mutumari, PMI does not go down all the way down to the enablers. They say that you get 42% of the questions from the people domain, 50% of questions from the process domain, and 8% of the questions come from the business environment domain. They do not drill down further into that. Okay. Aniket asks, if we have taken an exam in the simulator 2 weeks back, want to take it again? Same questions? Yes, same questions. So if you take exam 1, 2, 3, and 4, they have the same questions in there. Switch over to the quizzes. Take a look at my tutorial. I recently recorded a tutorial, the how to start an exam and how to use the simulator tutorial on the website. So when you come to the website, to the login page, there are tutorials, 4 tutorials on the login page. Watch the simulator tutorials where I show you exactly how this works. All right. Anthony, thank you, Mr. Good. You have the best and most complete simulator that I've ever seen. Thank you, Anthony. That's very kind. I appreciate it. Okay, moving on. A general tip would be to have a good knowledge of Agile and Scrum methodologies and roles and responsibilities for players within the team. Okay, this is, of course, just a confirmation of what the previous people have said. Agile is important. You need to understand Scrum, the methodologies, roles and responsibilities, and so on. So Agile is seriously important. What do you mean by Agile? Well, most likely it is Scrum. Many people give us this type of feedback, okay? Most Agile is actually Scrum, okay? And therefore, my recommendation, read the Scrum Guide at scrumguides.org. That's with an S at the end, scrumguides.org. We'll get to that again. I will repeat that later on in the process. Okay. I mean to ask if it would be better to study the official 2021 PMI exam prep book instead of the PMBOK guide. Rajesh, there is no official PMI exam prep book that I know of. The PMI, as you know, PMI now has their own course, okay? And along with the course, they have this student handbook. This here is the instructor guidebook. So they have a student handbook that goes along with the course. I don't know if you mean this, right? In my opinion, reading this student handbook is not enough to prepare for the PMP exam. You have to take the course. The book itself is just a summary of what the course teaches you. Okay. Full of Agile questions. No Scrum, Kanban, retrospectives, leadership styles, implement or starting Agile, moving from predictive to Agile, 2 calculate questions, several drag and drop scenarios. This really covers everything that we have heard so far, right? Some formula questions, some drag and drop scenarios, and then Agile, Agile, Agile. So you want to know Scrum, you need to know a little bit about Kanban, and then you need to know all those terms in Agile. You need to understand how to move from waterfall-based projects over to Agile. How do these relate? What are the responsibilities? What are the leadership approaches that you take in a predictive environment versus in a Agile environment? Okay. Now, I'm showing you this one right here, okay? This is once again sort of a little bit self-serving. Cornelius's team has done a tremendous job in explaining each and every answer choice of the question in the simulator. They also explain in detail why the other options will not be a correct answer. This helps clarify a lot of doubts around which the answer choices to select. So this is clearly me choosing a lessons learned that talks really nicely and positively about my exam simulator, okay? Just full disclosure here. But I have a point with this. Let's move on to the next slide, because even though we have done a good job in this, what we have found just in the last week is this here. Our simulator statistics show us that PMI ACP students are better at Agile questions than PMP students. Now, what do I mean by this? All right. In our exam simulator, we have taken a number of questions from the PMI ACP exam simulator and have included them into the PMP simulator, because remember, 50% about the questions in the PMP exam are now about Agile. And, you know, if you ask what does definition of done mean, the answer is the same in the PMI ACP exam as it is in the PMP exam. So we made sure only to take those questions that make sense. Right? I'm not going to ask you in-depth questions about the crystal methodology, which for the PMI ACP makes sense, but it doesn't make sense for the PMP exam. So, but what we have found is if we take the same question in ACP and PMP, ACPs are much better at answering these questions. kind of logical, right? Because they are supposed to be the Agile specialists. But what is the surprising bit is the stark difference that we have found. Here are two examples, okay? Question ID, 6125155. If you are a PMI ACP student, that's the same question in the ACP simulator as in the PMP simulator. 72% of ACP students answer that correctly, 48% of PMP. And it's the same with the next one. The spread is even bigger. 67% answered that one correctly on the ACP simulator, only 36% correct for PMP. All right. And so what you have to understand now is this. You are not really all that good in Agile. You have to become better in Agile. On, statistically speaking, this is a general finding that we have. If you are taking the PMP exam, your Agile knowledge needs to improve. The better you are at Agile, the better you will, the easier it will be to pass the PMP exam. And let me show you this. The easier it will be to pass the PMP exam. It's still going to be a hard exam, but you need to up your understanding in Agile so that you can answer these questions about Agile correctly. Okay, that's our finding. Amber says, your exam simulator booster course, very helpful. Thank you. Are there prepcast podcast episodes outside those of the booster course you recommend we listen to before taking the exam? Not really, Amber. That's why we collected those for the PMP booster course. Our expectation is this, that your course from 2020, so you probably taken a course in 2020 that is giving you all the instruction for the 2020 exam, and about 75%, 85% is still applicable this year. So you don't need to go back and restudy everything. You only need to cover, the bits that are missing. Okay, and those are the bits that we have in that particular booster course. Kaushik asks, what was the book you were showing? Have you ever heard of the PMBOK guide? That's the book I was showing, Kaushik. All right. Along with reading the reason for getting the questions wrong and reading the reference PMBOK Agile Guidebook, what tips would you give to a better mark on the simulator questions? Very simple, Paul. If it takes you an hour to answer the questions in the exam simulator, spend at least an hour reviewing them. Go back through the questions, look at the references, look at why you got it wrong, study, understand, learn why you got this question wrong. And by doing that, you learn from your mistakes. And if a similar question comes up in the future, you won't make that mistake again. That's the only way to get better. Take an exam, have questions that are incorrect, review those questions that are incorrect in depth, learn from it, do not repeat your mistake. And do that again and again and again, and you will get better at it. Okay, moving on. We're going into the hybrid questions. All right. Many of questions about the traditional product management team moving into Agile hybrid. So again, this is where you need to understand what all of these Agile term means, how to mix Agile and waterfall predictive processes, and how to do this. So again, Agile, hybrid, highly important to understand and to know. Probably 75 to 85% hybrid Agile related questions. Let me just clearly state, no, that is not the case. According to the exam content outline, 50% is Agile and hybrid. And wait, where's my hand? 50% is Agile hybrid and 50% is waterfall and predictive. So it's half and half. It's not 75% Agile and hybrid. It's 50% Agile and hybrid. Okay. Again, somebody who's really happy with our exam simulator in particular, because we tell you why something is incorrect. And this takes me back to the question that I've had from Paul here a moment ago, right? How to get a better mark. Our exam simulator tells you why your chosen question is wrong. It's not just telling you, yeah, you had it right, or yeah, you had it wrong. It tells you, no, you had it wrong, and here is why you had it wrong. What is the ideal time frame? The ideal time frame is, Dencio, until you reach about 75% average correct answers on the exam simulator. That's what you are shooting for. Doesn't matter how long it takes you, that's where you want to go. All right, formulas and calculator. Spoiler alert, folks. Here it is. Spoiler alert. PMI is taking out the formulas from the PMP exam. That's basically what all of this is going to boil down to. Okay. No full math questions at all. They did reference CPI and the other ones a few times, so just know what it means and what they represent. Did not use the calculator even for a single question, and there are hardly 1 to 2 questions requiring calculations. Just understand the terms CPI, SPI, float, compression, fast tracking, resource leveling, smoothing. Okay, not all of these are actually formula terms, but the formula terms that you need to know, they are in the PMBOK guide. Let's open up the PMBOK guide together. Page 267. I learned this last week live during the last week's show. This table here is page 267 of the PMBOK guide. These are all the formulas in the PMBOK guide. Wait, where are we? Here. This column, you need to know the last column here, titled Interpretation of Results. Interpretation of Results. That is what you need to know in regards to formulas for the PMP exam at this time. Moving on. Definitions and ITTOs. Wait, before we go that, Ernie asks, is the Agile Guide the source of study for the PMI ACP? Yes, it is. You need to definitely study the Agile Practice Guide for the PMI ACP. And frankly, now that Agile is so important for the PMP exam, you also need to study it for the PMP exam. My recommendations are coming up shortly. Okay, ITTOs. Know the definitions in the back of the PMBOK guide. There is an exhaustive list of key terms and definitions. I will make sure that you have a good grasp of what each of these documents and terms are. Okay, this person tells you, yeah, you have to study those terms. And now the next one, they tell you a little bit the opposite. I didn't study the ITTOs at all. They're good to know from a 30,000-foot view, but don't stress over them. There might have been subtle references to ITTO, but not a lot. What does this mean? Very simple. You need to have a solid grasp of the terminology. Okay, you need to know what a WBS is. You need to know what an RBS is. You need to know what PMI means when they talk about a stakeholder. What is a stakeholder? If you don't know these terms, you will have a hard time figuring out what the correct answer is to a question, especially if English is not your native language. You must read, the glossary in the back of the PMBOK guide. My recommendation is pick a letter every day. Today I'm reading through A and I'm learning about all the terms with A, and tomorrow I'll do B and so on, right? And you learn about these terms, okay? But don't fret over them, right? You don't need to know every single ITTO in the PMBOK guide. You don't need to know the terminology in depth. You have to have a good understanding of how to use them and what it means and how to apply them and how real life scenarios utilize these terms, these documents, these tools, techniques, and outputs. But you don't have to be able to explain which process has which 7 ITTOs. You do no longer have to do that. Okay. Do we need to memorize the Agile terms? Dencio, you do not need to memorize it all. Like I just said, you need to know them and be able to apply them. You do not need to memorize them. Okay. Technology. That is a new one. Here we have one new lessons learned that I came across. Another pointer is this: don't use a work laptop for these courses, right? And he actually means for the exam, not for these courses. There is too much security to make them compatible with the View software, even after their system tech tells you you're okay. By this, he means the following. Right now, we're all, many of us at least, we are in our home offices. We have our business laptops, not our own, the corporate laptops. And corporate laptops, you log in via virtual private network to your company, right? Your laptop is locked down, solid, by the people who own it, your company, your employer. If you want to take your PMP exam at home on that laptop, it's going to fail. because your company probably has firewall after firewall after firewall on there, and it's not going to work. So if you take the PMP exam at home, put your work laptop away and bring out your personal laptop. You can't do it on a phone. You can't do it on an iPad. It has to be either a desktop or a laptop on which you take your PMP exam, and not your corporate machine, because they have it locked down and it won't work for you. Taking the exam. That is another new section today here. This person tested at the Pearson VUE Testing Center. It was well run and friendly. So if you feel comfortable during this pandemic to wear, I don't know, a K95 mask or a KN95 mask and go to the center and be right there, then, you know, it seems to be well run. It seems to be friendly. But here's an interesting one. This is actually a first that I've ever heard anybody in my 12 years suggesting that. I would highly suggest taking the exam in the earlier parts of the day. I took my exam at 5:30 p.m. and was absolutely drained by the end. Okay, just so you know, this person actually passed, but they were drained. So if you have the opportunity, take the exam in the morning, right? Wake up, have a good breakfast, and schedule the exam. I don't know, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock your time, something like that. And, you know, you will be much more awake. But even though this person says well run and friendly, right, and this person recommends do it early in the morning, don't expect that you're just going to log on to the system and then, you know, within a minute you'll be taking your exam. Here you go. I was waiting for 40 minutes until they allowed me to start the exam, and you don't know whether you can exit the room while you're waiting or not because it says recording. Okay, so if you're taking your exam online, be aware that you may be sitting around for 30, 40, 50, an hour, you know, minutes or an hour, just waiting for Pearson VUE to finally get to you and allow you to start your exam. That can happen. Benjamin, is there anything more needed beyond the exam center to be 100% sure to clear the exam? Benjamin, there is no guarantee that you will pass the PMP exam. Let me just be absolutely honest. Okay, all you can do is risk management and do as much studying and take as many questions in an exam simulator as you can. There is still no guarantee that you can and will pass the PMP exam on your first attempt. That's just a fact. I'm not going to give anybody ever a guarantee. If you do X, Y, and Z, you will pass the exam. I can give you statistics, I can give you numbers, but I cannot give you a 100% guarantee to pass your exam. Any recommendations to take the the exam in the PM Authorized Center? My experience, I had a network issue during my exam and lost 25 minutes of my exam. Oh, so you recommend go and take it at the Authorized Center because you lost 25 minutes of your exam. Hey, Benjamin, did you pass? Joel, did you pass your exam then? After all, even though you lost the 25 minutes, that'd be interesting to hear. Okay. Here you go. Needy says, I missed the Proctor-based and Pearson exam discussion. Once again, you can please suggest if taking whole Proctor-based is better choice than a center-based. Needy, it's exactly the same. The rules are the same, but you know, you may run into the same problem as Joel did here. You know, network issue, you'll lose 25 minutes. Or just like this person here, you're sitting around for 30 minutes at home waiting for them to finally get to you. More on taking the exam. This person, I wasn't sure if water is allowed. On the website, it says yes. But on the image, when you start the exam, it says no beverages. So I removed it. My recommendation is always the same. Let me show you my desktop. Okay, so this is welcome to my mess. This is what my desktop currently looks like, okay? It's an absolute mess. You have to have a clear desktop, okay? You cannot have anything on your desk while you're doing the exam. So remove everything, no drinks, no snacks, no empty desk. Keyboard, mouse, that's it. That's about as much as you're supposed to have on your desk. Breaks. What about breaks? There are now 2 breaks. There is a break after 60 questions. There is a second break after 120 questions. You cannot change it. This is built into the system. You answer 60 questions, then you take a break. you answer 60 more questions, then you take a break, you answer 60 more questions, and then you are hopefully a PMP at the end of 180 questions. Okay, and my recommendation is you do take the breaks, right? It doesn't take away from your exam time. The 10 minutes of the breaks are in addition to the time you have on the exam. Walter asks, are they compulsory? You cannot go back. Let me show you the next slide here, right? Once you submit the 60 questions, you cannot go back to those in the previous section. So you answer the 60 questions in the first section, then you take a break, then you answer 60 questions in the second section. You cannot go back to the first section, and you can also not go forward to the third section. Right? So it's 60, break, 60, break, 60, end. That's how it goes. All right. Let me see. For me, the proctor lost connectivity when they changed proctors, so they stopped my test. I'm taking it in the center now. All right, Sharon. I'm sorry to hear that. That must have been extremely frustrating that it's not even your own fault that they had to fail you. All right. So much for all these lessons learned. Finally. Okay. Now come the big ones. Take your time to carefully review each question, but you need to make sure that you are keeping a decent pace answering questions. This was true back in 2004 when I took my exam. This is true today. Read the full question. Read the question, understand what the question asks, read the answers, know and understand what the answers are saying. Make your choice, move on. Do not linger, do not waste time. If you know exactly, oh, this is a question about topic X, I have a hard time with topic X, mark the question for review, go to the next one. Come back later. Okay? And then at the end of the 60 questions, make sure that, you've answered all your 60 questions. Right? Remember, you can't go back. So section 1, answer all 60 questions, submit. Section 2, answer all 60 questions, submit. Section 3, same thing. Right? But you are responsible for your own time management. If you spend 3 hours on the first 60 questions, well, you now only have 50 minutes to spend on the next 120. You're probably not going to make it, right? So time management is an important factor on this exam. Read the question, manage your time well. And now, this one here, wait, where is it? This exam is really about solving problems and fixing issues with peoples and plants. Practical application is definitely the name of the game. If you have heard that the PMP exam is a theoretical exam, that it doesn't talk about real life, it is not applicable, that would have been true 3-4 years ago. More and more people are coming back with exactly this here. It is scenario-based, it is real life, it is solving problems, it is practical application. So the PMP exam has evolved and it's more and more practical and up to date. Okay. Reader Sense Edition and Pinbox 6 does not include any speaking from where to learn about Agile. Oh, Shubhajit, that is a very good question. Why don't we talk about this right now with my next segment, which is strategy and training materials for the new exam. Here I have 2 approaches for you. So the first one I'm going to show you is for those people starting fresh. So if you have not done anything so far, you haven't opened the PMBOK guide, you haven't taken any training, you're just thinking about PMP exam preparation, this is for you. The second recommendation after this will be, what if you started already and now, you started in 2020 and now it's 2021 and you need to take the new exam? What then? So let's begin with this here. This is for people who are brand new to the PMP exam. You're starting your PMP exam today. You haven't done anything so far. What do you do? Okay, well, as your foundation, you are going to take the PMI authorized PMP exam prep course. That is the official course that PMI offers. It will teach you everything that you need to know from a content perspective in order to prep for the exam. On top of that, you are going to study the PMBOK Guide 6th edition at a minimum read the introduction to each section, right? And the Agile Practice Guide. The Agile Practice Guide comes together with the PMBOK Guide. So if you buy a printed version of the PMBOK Guide here, then the Agile Practice Guide, wait, there we go. The Agile Practice Guide comes with the PMBOK Guide. It's in the same shrink wrap. If you download the PDF version, then it will download as a single PDF document. Starts at about page 760, the Agile Practice Guide. Okay, so it's one document. You need to study the Agile Practice Guide. You need to study it even twice. On top of that, I want you to go to agilemanifesto.org and read the Agile Manifesto. That only takes you about 5 minutes to read. It's really a short read. Okay. They also have 12 principles of Agile that they have on that website, and you should read those 12 principles as well and understand them. In addition to the Agile Manifesto, .org, go to scrumguides.org. And please note, that's Scrum Guides with an S at the end. So Scrum Guide, plural, with an S.org at the end. And review the Scrum Guide, because much of what you will see on the PMP exam when it comes to Agile is Scrum. So you really want to understand Scrum. All right. And then on top of that, everything that you've done so far was with an authorized training partner from PMI. Your instructor was vetted by PMI, and you need a simulator. It's always the same with that logo there. There we go. Simulator, right? You want a PMP Exam Simulator 2021 to allow you to take your experience and the theoretical knowledge that we have just built up bottom up, course, PMBOK Guide, APG, Manifesto, Scrum Guide, all of that. You want to apply that knowledge in a exam simulator. Okay, now that's it if you start fresh. This is the recommended approach for people who just started out this year. But what if you started last year, right? You've done some studies in 2020, and now it's 2021, and you want to prep for the 2021 exam now. Well, at the bottom are your 2020 studies. Don't dismiss your 2020 studies. What you have studied in 2020 is still applicable today, right? About 75% of what you've studied there is still the other way around. Your studies from 2020 cover about 75% of what you need to know for the current PMP exam. So what you've done back then is still good, but on top of that, you now need to cover, the remaining 25%. Look for a booster course, a gap course, a bridging course, an upgrade course, whatever you want to call it. And that will then cover the missing content that you don't yet have. Okay? And that together will bring you up to speed what you need to know for the 2021 exam. And now on top of that, it's pretty much the same as we've just seen. I want you to study the PMBOK Guide 6th edition, and I want you to study the Agile Practice Guide twice. Then I want you to go to the Agile Manifesto, read the manifesto and the 12 principles. I want you to go to Scrum Guides with an S.org and read the Scrum Guide. And you guessed it, you need to have a 2021 simulator to, again, use your practical knowledge, every theoretical bit of information that you have just learned by going through all this training, and apply it to scenario-based questions on your exam simulator. Okay, so take action. What do I want you to do? I want you to, if you are considering to take a course, I want you to look for the PMI ATP badge. PMI now has these new badges for their authorized training partners. Make sure that when you select a training course, that you get the training course, the official PMI training course, from an authorized training partner. Then you take that official authorized course. After you are done with the course, and this has nothing to do with the quality of PMI's course, it is impossible that a 5-day course teaches you everything you need to know. That was true in 2010. That's true in 2015. That'll be true next year. No course can teach you everything you need to know in 1 week. You have to add self-study on top of that. Okay, so you have to complement your course with 3 to 5 weeks of self-study, right? And what we are doing right now is, when you're done with the course, day 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now what? How do you now go from the 5th day to your actual exam? That's where we're working on. We're working on a guidebook for that. That's our primary focus. And once we are done with that, then we're going to go back. What do you do between day 1 and day 2? What do you do between day 2 and day 3? Say if you take a Saturday course or something like that, right? So our guidebooks, first focus, how to get to the exam, and then we'll go back what to do during the actual course. And on top of that, obviously, PMBOK guide, you want to study that. Agile practice guide, the manifesto, the Scrum guide, all of that. You want to study that. And yes, you want to use an exam simulator. And here's the thing, and I know this sounds simplistic, right? But if you have done all of that studying, all of that applying your knowledge to questions on an exam simulator, yes, it's simplistic, but then you take and you pass your PMP exam, because if you do everything right, you are prepared and you can slay this monster of an exam and get through that. Okay. Igor-san too says, I just wanted to thank Cornelius and your team. I passed the exam this Saturday and I wouldn't be successful without the simulator. The simulator is a must if you want to succeed. Thank you very much, Igor-san. Very kind of you. All right. So are you taking a course in 2021? Then please go to this URL here, pmprepcast.com/PMP, where you can sign up to our 2021 PMP courses. And yes, this is the official PMI PMP course developed by PMI, taught to you by an authorized trainer through an authorized training partner. If you're only looking for the exam simulator, then please stop by at pmexamsimulator.com/PMP. We have 2,100 questions. Okay, let me go 2 slides back because there's a question that just came in from Ernie. Ernie, the Scrum Guide changed in November. Is the 21 is the new guide or the old guide? That's the good question, Gurney. So when you go to the scrumguides.org, you will notice that on scrumguides.org there are 2, the 2017 and the 2020 Scrum Guide. Which one should you read? At this point, we're not 100% sure. We think PMI is using the 2017. Okay, so study the 2017 in depth, but review the 2020. That's kind of where we're leaning right now. We do not think PMI is that quick. Valencia asks, will the recording be available for you later? Yes, Valencia, it will be later, and you can view it then again as a recording. Okay, so once again, if you're interested in the PMI, the official PMI course, here's the URL, pmprepcast.com/PMP. If you would like the exam simulator, pmexamsimulator.com/PMP. And that's it from me today. Thank you, everybody. This was a lot of fun for me. Thank you for all these great questions. And I'm looking forward to seeing you in class, and I'm looking forward to seeing you next week at our next live stream. Until next time.